Morning, everybody. Nice to see everybody again. Oh, wait a minute. See everybody again. You mean Encore. Nice to see you on an Encore morning. Encore is a yellow tea, and yellow teas are very mysterious. Well, they will be until the end of this session. So, by the end of this session, there's going to be things you understand that you don't today. You're going to understand the history of this particular yellow tea called Encore. You're going to understand more about the terroir, most of it, the physical terroir that this tea exists in. And then, oh my God, as an added bonus, you will understand more about the most powerful force in the universe by the end of this session. This is my promise to you today. So before we jump into this, let's talk about shop news. Oh, and also let me wish everybody a belated happy Thanksgiving. Hope all of you had a wonderful holiday, relaxing holiday, and are ready for this mad rush to the end of the year. Shop news. Very busy this week, lots of new people. That was all great. For old friends like all of you, you haven't gotten the notice to renew the annual membership yet, but that will be coming in this next couple days. Everything this year seems to be running just slightly later than I want it to be, but that doesn't mean it's not in my mind. So next week, you will see the notice for that, and I hope as many of you who can re-up. The pricing will be slightly different, but the savings will be larger. So that's what's to look forward to. Let's go ahead and jump right into Encore. So where is Encore? And for those of you who got up a little bit later this morning, or for those of you who were very busy trying to catch up on all the work that you were supposed to do yesterday, you may not have noticed that I sent a map of Hunan to you. So check in your email, and this map of Hunan specifically shows where Dungting Lake is. And Junshan Island, which is what we're talking about, is in Dungting Lake. So when you open that map up, look at the top right corner, the northeastern corner, and you'll see a place called Yueyang, Yueyang. And right there, right next to it, slightly towards the northeast of it, is a big lake. And that lake is Dungting Lake, and that's where this island is. So this place, not only Junshan Island, but the neighboring place, which is about 16 miles away, a neighboring township, I should say, which is about 16 miles away, called Yueyang, has been famous throughout history, throughout relatively recent history in China. It shows up in poems, it shows up in literature, and generally speaking, almost always in a positive way. Beautiful, beautiful area. It's a place where people love to congregate. There's been lots of history in this place. So that's one aspect of this area. Junshan Island itself is in the middle of this lake. However, when we go, we usually drive there. But much of the year, you can't drive there. The lake has risen so much that it actually buries the roadway where you can drive, and you have to take a boat out. So that's kind of starting nature of this particular area. Sometimes you can drive out there. Much of the year, probably about 8 months or so, you got to take a boat out there. So it's somewhat isolated and it's unpredictable. It's got forests, it's got mountains, and it's a very, very small area. So this small area has been famous for some amount of time. And it's been famous for producing tea. It's been famous in terms of how tea, there's legends and how tea got to that island, all sorts of fun things. But instead of focusing on those legends, let's first tell you the terroir, and then we'll get to this very powerful force. Not very powerful, the most powerful force in the universe. We're going to talk about that in relationship to this island. So the terroir, I'm really talking about the physical terroir. By the way, most of the people who live there are Han. They're Han people. We really don't have a lot of minorities, essentially no minorities living there. So you have more of a traditional culture. And it's central to South China. It's more central culture than it is South China culture. They eat fish. They eat lots of indigenous vegetables. The weather there averages between 61, 62 degrees a year on average, but that doesn't really take account of the summer where it becomes somewhat hotter and very, very humid. The soil is both sandy, it's got some red earth in it, it's got some black earth in it, but it's rich. In China, this is the lowest elevation. And in fact, in the world, it's probably one of the lowest elevations where tea is grown and cultivated. And tea has been on this island for at least 1,000 years, probably more like 1,500, 1,600, 1,700 years, something like that. Nobody knows exactly for sure. The other aspect of this island in terms of rainfall, it gets about 50 to 55 inches a year. So there's plenty of rainfall that occurs, and this island is always being replenished because there are 3 rivers that drain into this lake. And as they drain, much like the Mississippi Delta, you get, once the soil comes up above water, it's extremely rich in nutrients, and therefore lots of things grow there. So historically, when did tea really start in the Junshan Island? We don't know the exact year, but we seem to have historical evidence that at least sometime from the 500s AD on, that there's been tea on this island. Since you have evidence of that, it's probably been somewhat longer. And like I said, these legends go back to 2,000 or 3,000 years ago, that a mythical emperor actually brought concubines to the island who planted tea. So that's the mythical part of it. You know, let's leap from mythical to go into powerful forces. In fact, the most powerful force in the universe. Let's talk about a person, a young scholar named Yang Qing. Now, some of you who've been on these broadcasts before are going to think to yourself, wait a minute, I've heard this theme about young scholar. Is this young scholar going to get sick? Isn't that what happened in Scarlet Road? And then the tea's going to be famous because he got sick? Now, it's good for you to remember these, and it's good for you to identify the theme. But no, this one's a little bit different. Although this young scholar was studying to take the exams in Beijing, things are quite different because he was healthy, young and full of vigor. And so he's studying, he's getting ready to take, and he lived actually close to Yeoyang, not too far away from Yeoyang. He wasn't on the island. So on the way to Beijing, he stopped at the island. This is a beautiful place. Went to the island, was there for a few days, and then just as he was getting ready to leave, he passed a nunnery. And as he went in to pray to Guanyin Bodhisattva, he thought, yeah, got to do the prayer. And I want to pass those exams and become rich and famous. Because, you know, if you pass those exams at a high enough level, Emperor recognized, oh, you're good. You're really good. We're going to give you a high-paying, nice assignment where you control a region. So all the scholars were hoping for this. So he stops, makes that prayer. He's getting ready to leave, and he sees this beautiful young nun. And he's struck dumb. Well, not exactly. He's struck blind. Well, that's not true either. He could still see. So he went to her and said, you are really beautiful. I want to marry you. And the nun said, you know, I'm in this nunnery and I can't leave the nunnery. And let me tell you my story. My mother died in childbirth, and my father just last year passed away on a journey. He was a scholar and he passed away on a journey. So I went and to the nunnery and begged them to help me get the resources to bury my father, which they did. And in exchange, I'm here. I'm here for life, essentially, unless the head of the nunnery says I can marry. So this scholar, I'm smart. I'm going to talk to the head. I am going to get her to agree that you and I can marry. So he talks to the head, and the head says, what? Not even a chance. Not unless I were ordered to by the emperor himself could this occur. So usually that's a dead end because, you know, if you really want something and the answer is here in the US, well, not unless the president orders me to give it to you is this going to happen. So, you know, that almost never happens, right? So this scholar says to the young nun, don't worry. I love those famous words, 2 words, don't worry, 3 words, do not worry. Goes, takes the test, and what happens? Number 1, his results were number 1. So the emperor meets all the top result people, and he meets them individually because he wants to make a judgment about their character. And by the way, I'm glad you're thinking to ask me, when did this occur? So this occurred in the early Tang Dynasty, in the 600s. And so the emperor meets this scholar and says, congratulations, your results were extremely impressive. Scholar says everything properly, nicely, emperorly, you know, respectfully, that's what I mean. The emperor is really liking this guy, and he says, you know what? What can I give you? Because I really think, what is it that you want? And so the emperor was thinking, because most of the young, successful scholars would request, oh, give me the region of, say, Nanjing. I want that region. I want to be in control. I want the head position in that position. But this guy didn't say that. Because, as I explained to you before, the most powerful force in the universe was at work here. A 4-letter force. love. And so he says to the emperor, he says, there's this nun I want to marry. Can you help me make it happen? Emperor is thinking, oh my God, this guy didn't ask for fame and riches. Instead, he wants to marry a nun. Well, that's pretty darn easy. Writes the edict, sends it down. And by the way, as a gift, because when emperors make these decisions, they send nice gifts. 30,000 pieces of the local currency. That's a big number. Scholar is so happy. Goes back down. The head of the nunnery is stunned, but this is an edict from the emperor. So there's no arguing this edict. Says, okay, you go marry. They marry, and in certain areas or certain storytellers would end their story right there. And everybody would think, yeah, most powerful force in the universe. Oh, this is such a great end to the story. But no, I'm not ending. There's more. I love these stories. So they go back to Beijing because the guy hasn't gotten his assignment yet. He's rushed down and married this lady. And he tells this lady, we got to go back to the emperor, thank him, and I might get an assignment. The lady says, oh no, we're not leaving yet. And so now this is the amazing part. Well, it's all amazing, but this is a further amazing part of the story. The next morning, extremely early, she gets up. There are 4 ancient tea trees, and it's springtime. When do they pick this tea? They pick it usually around March 24th, 25th, somewhere in that time. And you can't just, this story would be good if you were just picking by hand. It would be better if you were picking by hand and you couldn't see what you were picking. But no, we've got to raise it another level. The lady picks the tea using her mouth, and she picks buds from these 4 ancient trees, enough for the emperor to enjoy. And the scholar's thinking, because remember, he grew up not too far from here. Hey, great tea deserves what else? Greater water. So he lived next to a spring called White Crane Spring. He got the water from that, and they go back to Beijing. So he goes to the emperor, and he says, oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. You are so great. And by the way, my wife and I have a gift for you. The emperor's thinking, okay, what is it? It's tea. And this further flummoxes the emperor because he gets tribute tea all the time. Now, who could offer him something better than what officials from all over China are already sending as the best teas? But this emperor likes this guy and says, okay. And the scholar further explains, I've got this water from White Crane Spring. All right, you make it for me. So the scholar gets this coal brazier, heats the water up, makes the tea, puts a cover on it, and, offers it up to the emperor. The emperor takes the cover off, and what happens? Yes, this is not a good story unless you have all of these things happen. 2 cranes fly out from either direction and circle the court. And all the officials in the emperor's retinue, because when you're an emperor, you have a big posse, and that posse always follows you around. They gasp, and they say, oh my God, this is such a great, because cranes are symbols of luck and great things to happen. Your reign is going to be superb. So that's the first good thing. Second thing, the emperor smells this thing. oh my God, I've never had anything like this. Or the aroma is not like nothing I've had. Drinks it and is so pleased that he awards the wife of the scholar 18,000 pieces of brocade. And that should last a lifetime, I think. And then gives the scholar one of the key positions within the empire. So now you know what that most powerful force in the universe can accomplish, given the right setting. So that's the legend behind this tea. Obviously, at that time, it had to be green tea that was provided. And so your next question should be, well, when did they start doing yellow tea? And what is yellow tea? Good. They started, as far as records seem to indicate, they started sometime in the Qing dynasty. And to tell you the truth, everything that I've read about the reasons for starting, it doesn't really resonate with me. It doesn't make me feel like, oh, you know, this makes perfect sense. I'm going to make yellow tea because yellow equals gold and I'm going to retire rich. There are none of those stories. So the real story is we don't know. And there seems to be no historical evidence of exactly why they went through this very complex process. How they even thought of doing this complex process, a process which needs storage space, by the way, and a process which needs about 72 hours of continual processing. I mean, my God, if you're picking a bud at that time, if you were picking a bud and processing it, that's a day or less, right? All of a sudden, we're out to 72 hours. A big change. And when you hear the process and the tools for this process, you're going to be astounded. But before you're astounded, you're already feeling thirsty. I have a feeling. Oh, yes, you are feeling thirsty. So before I start down the path of what yellow tea is, let's talk about how we are in possession of this and how you're having the opportunity today to have this. So we know people at the official factory that produces the highest grade of yellow tea. And we were able to garner a couple pounds of this. And that's it. Well, we could have garnered more, but this would have meant we were poor after garnering more. This is very expensive. And generally speaking, we just don't offer this except to the tea family. Oh, that means you. So that's why you're getting to try this specialty. Now, you've heard me tell the story before of when China was admitted to the UN in 1971. Of all the teas they could have served all the delegates, what did they choose? They chose this one because it is so unique. Mao liked this thing. It's really good. It's really interesting. And especially the aesthetic of it is really interesting. So before we start into the processing modality, let's get you started in seeing how this is brewed and then get you brewing it and tasting it so you can tell me whether this was worth going and tapping into the greatest power of the universe. So without further ado, I'm going to ask Biju to come on up and demonstrate the brewing of Encore and then have you do an Encore and brew it yourselves. So without further ado, let me bring in the tea master, Biju.
Hey, good morning. Happy Thanksgiving. So we do yellow tea today. Okay. Today is change a little bit, but I like it too. So I made it myself too. So I use the 5. Same usual, you use 2 or 3. This I use 5.
So she uses 5 cups so
yes.
that she can aerate the water faster, but using 2 is fine.
We have one comment back from somebody about what a beautiful tea love story that was.
Beautiful tea love story. It is a beautiful tea love story, and it has depth to it. So many of these stories sometimes seem to end a little soon. This one has a lot of stuff in it. Good comment. All right, you notice she's aerating the water. You can aerate at any temp. Well, actually, here she's not. She's heating all the cups. And when you heat all the cups, you can use anywhere from 170 to 212. And then when you aerate the water, today you'll use 170. Why would you heat up all these cups? Well, at the end of the day, she doesn't know. Tea Master doesn't know which one she's going to end up using. So she wants to make sure that they all are evenly heated. And you notice, not in a hurry. Tea rhythm. Plugging in, so to speak. All right, and she's drawing the 175, which she's going to aerate and cool down. And while she's drawing that water, there's 8 steps to remember. There's greening, there's cooling, there is wrapping, there's baking, there's cooling again, rebaking, and then final steps to set everything in place. And this is a 3-day, 72-hour, 3 days and night, 72-hour process. That's the process. And we'll go on over that in detail in a minute. All right, so again, she's drawing the 175-degree water. Mm-hmm. So she puts only half in or so. And you'll see why in a minute.
Someone asked, what's the vintage of this tea, please?
Last year.
Last year.
So she has 2 different temperatures. 175 is where she's starting the tea in. And right next to it is 170. Now, don't worry if you don't have enough cups to do this. But the reason you do this is to get this aesthetic of going up and down. So these leaves, under certain circumstances, or buds, I should say, will float up and down, and it's beautiful. And by the way, that was one of the reasons they chose this when they were admitted to the UN, because just the beauty of the leaves going up and down is very unique. In an ideal situation, it'll go up and down 3 times. But there's a lot of factors that have to be in place before that really happens.
So you mean they would sink, they absorb water and then rise to the top and then, wow.
Mm-hmm.
This is special.
Yep.
This is in Hunan, Ireland, yeah. So.
And they never quite explain why this happens. But you know why it has to happen from a scientific perspective.
Yeah.
So one part of the leaf got to be heavier, but not so much heavier that it can't float back up to the top. So presumably the head of the leaf, which has the other leaves that come out from that place, is what would cause that. All right.
What was the temperature of the water that Xiaobei just floated?
170.
Okay.
Yeah. So the first one was 175.
Okay.
170.
Yeah. So the first half 175, second half 170.
Great.
All right. So as usual, this is a spring pip in March 24th, 25th, 26th, somewhere in that arena. And they pick bud only. There are not many acres on Junshan Needle that produce this. On Junshan Island itself, the production is about 1,000 pounds, and that's it. They are working to expand that area of production because the demand for Junshan Needle, especially the really good Junshan Needle, first or special grade Junshan Needle, is over 100,000 pounds. And so therefore, when you have that type of mismatch, you have a tremendous price differential. And that's the case with this. First off, if you can get some, it's very expensive. And then second off, it is, even if you're able to get it, you usually can't get very much at one time. The government actually takes the greater part of it because they use this as diplomatic gifts. And why wouldn't they? Because it's just a wonderful and interesting tea. Yes.
Is it from tea bushes or trees or both?
It's both. So this particular, we would say old bushes. And this is a really interesting question. Let me go back. I answered that so fast that I realized we need to give some clarification. So it's not tea trees like Hunan, where they are thousands of years old. This would be bushes that have grown into trees that are maybe a couple hundred, 300, maybe 400 years old at most. So that was a 2-minute steeping. Yeah, and every step, do slowly. There's no sense in rushing this. Thank you. Beautiful color. And one of the things when you do this, if you look carefully, there are trichomes everywhere. When they pick, they are very attentive to making sure that they don't damage where the trichomes are. Even as they're processing, they want to make sure that they don't damage because trichome content, the aesthetics of it is part of what's special about this tea. All right, so let's think about the quality arena. Let's go ahead and enter the quality arena. So this is at 170 degrees, so we're going to take a 170-degree sip. We're going to roll it around in our mouth. We're going to determine mouthfeel. And then after rolling it around, we'll swallow it and determine, is there an aftertaste? What is it? And then lastly, in this first go around, we'll look and feel the energetics of this. After that, we'll do a second sip and we'll focus and reinforce what we learned on the first sip. And then we'll go ahead and talk about aroma and taste. So let's enter. I'll enter. Okay, I'm getting the mouthfeel for sure. Oh, interesting aftertaste. Okay. I don't quite grok energetics yet, but I will. I can already tell that somehow this is working in me, but I don't quite grok it. So I'm going to do second sip. So I'm focusing on understanding my initial step and confirming that what I believed before is accurate. I'm also now beginning to think of taste. And I'm also beginning to think of aroma. Okay, and I'm thinking of the energy that I seem to be sensing. I'm going to take one more sip because I have no self-control. You already all know this. Oh my gosh. The only thing I'm going to give away to you, I think it's good. I think it's very good. So it's your turn to brew. I'm going to have the tea master brew with you. So go ahead and set your timers to 2 minutes. Make sure you aerate the water. Remember, you're going to have 2 different temperatures.
A participant asked, so this is tea, this just consists of buds, right?
If this tea bud is, I'm sorry.
Is bud only?
It's bud only. There's an incipient leaf. Oh, I get to use a big word. A pedicle. P-E-D-I-C-L-E. Right coming up on the leaf, on the bud, and that's what's used. And when they grade this stuff, they're looking for uniformity. It should be close to 1 inch long or a little over 1 inch. All the buds need to be that way. There are 9 don'ts. So don't pick a bud that is during the rain or where there's dew, or it's purple, or it's hollow, or it's already open, has frostbite, bug damage, emaciated, too long or too short. Those are the 9 don'ts when you're dealing with this pick of this. So it's really exacting. They are not fooling around with this.
Is the pedicle visible on the pick?
The pedicle is visible, but it's just barely visible. All right, and so remember, you have 2 sets of water. And by the way, if you don't want to go through that entire process, don't worry about it. You don't need to. But if you want the best result, you'll put it in the 170, and then you'll add the 175. So you put it in the 170, you shake it around a little bit to get some action. Beautiful. See, she's making 2 cups here. Oh, and you set your timer.
Yes.
2 minutes each.
It's dancing out.
You shake it a little bit to get the up and down motion.
就什么水的那个比例要配好。
Yeah, and the most important thing is to make sure that the ratio of the water is done properly. So what about this process? What is there about the process that's so complicated? First off, this greening. You pick, you bring it in, you wither slightly, and you, in quotes, green it. So what does green it mean? You take the tea leaves, usually about 10 ounces at a time. You put it in a container that's polished. It's a metal container that's polished. You tilt that container over fire to a 20-degree angle, and you grab the leaves and you pick them up and let them go. And this is a 4 or 5 minute process. The temperature is anywhere from 220, I'm sorry, that's not right, from 212 to about 270. And if you ask me, precision-wise, I don't know, because they're doing it via experience. And you do that portion for about 2.5 minutes. The next 2.5 minutes, you reduce the temperature somewhere around 122 degrees, and you continue to do that. So as opposed to green tea, where you get that walk up to 300 or 400 degrees, you denature that enzyme, so there's no oxidation. You're not doing that with this. Much lower temperature, relatively speaking. You're trying to reduce oxidation, but you don't want to eliminate it, because yellow tea is lightly oxidized. Oh, the timer has gone off. And you're going to separate the tea leaves from the tea liquor.
First comment on taste, there are scent and taste. There's both a strong umami scent and taste to this tea.
Strong umami scent and taste. Okay, so it looks like in the beginning, maybe this is going to be lighter, but in fact, it's not lighter. In fact, there's strong umami taste and umami scent. Yours should look somewhat like this. So it's greenish, slight tinge of yellow in it, and you should be able to see very small trichomes floating around. So let's go ahead and enter the quality arena.
Another participant says it seems to have a smooth, sweet flavor as well.
Ah, love this comment. Smooth, sweet flavor. The top grade of this type of tea is always commented as having an unexpected sweetness to it. And when the emperor wrote about this tea, one of the things he wrote about was the unexpected sweetness to it. So good catch, smooth and sweet.
The warm leaves had a smooth, round, sweet malt scent.
Smooth, round, sweet malt scent of the warm leaves. Why do I like this comment? Because it says, while the flavor may have at the start what seems like a single note, look at all the other things that are going into that. So we've already had umami as part of what's going into that, malt as what's going into this, sweet, rounded, lots of things that tea drinkers at the highest level, these are things that you love.
The wet leaves had a bright vegetal note, but the tea liquor is back to smooth, round, and floral.
Tea liquor, smooth, round, and floral. Oh my God, you caught the other comment that the emperor made. Emperor said sweet and slightly floral. You caught that. That's incredible. That was the tea liquor. Go through the warm leaves
So,
again.
well, the wet leaves
Wet
have
leaves,
a bright vegetal note.
That's right. Bright vegetal note on the wet leaves. You bet. You smell these leaves, and right away, there's nothing subtle. They come at you full force and make you wonder, oh my God, is this tea going to be really, really strong? And no, all of you have said rounded, sweet, floral. Umami.
One of the participants asks, are the tea bushes and trees, were they wild? Are they wild or were they cultivated?
You have both. So you have, oh my gosh, a really complicated question. Great question. So let's start off with that. Initially on this island, probably from the very beginning, by and large, and this is loosely said, I realize I got to back up once again. At the very beginning, they were probably wild, but shortly thereafter, not. And so for the last 1700 years, they've probably been cultivated to some degree. Obviously, during the recent 100, 200, 300 years, heavily cultivated. But the bushes that are 2, 3, 4, 500 years, I don't think of in the same way. And I think the questioner probably was trying to make that distinction as well, but I don't know. But I'm going to make it real clear. The ones that were planted 400 or 500 years ago were planted, but they weren't planted using the techniques that they use today.
Another comment by a participant, very light, cooling mouthfeel.
Love this. Light, cooling mouthfeel. This is really cooling. And I get that and got that right away. And it's also a cooling aftertaste for me. So let's focus on the science, I realize, rather than going through all the steps, because the science of this is really important. And I already gave you the initial difference, which is really, really important. It allows for when they pack the leaves. So essentially what they do is they go through this heating, cooling, and then letting it really cool to room temperature, then packing, and they pack in about 2-pound boxes. And these boxes have a certain type of paper that the tea leaves are in, and they pack them away for about 40 hours. However, they keep track of the temperature. If the interior of the box gets too hot, and so let's define too hot. Too hot being 88, 89, 90 degrees. And oh, by the way, what is that, the temperature? Remembering the bell curve of oxidation right there at the top of the bell, that's the 88, 89 degrees. They immediately unpack to try and get that temperature down. And so what this means is they denatured or slowed down the enzyme through that initial process, but they haven't eliminated entirely. So when you ask me, is yellow tea oxidized? The answer is yes, it definitely is oxidized. Next question should be, well, about how much is it oxidized? Is it oxidized more or less than white tea? More, about 3 times what white tea is. So we're talking about 10% or so. So it's less than the light oolongs, more than the white tea. It sits in that in-between space. Yes.
On energetics, one of the participants says, I feel like this tea is relaxing and would pull me into a contemplative mood. It might be some time if I were the emperor sipping this tea for the first time before giving my impressions to the scholar.
Love this comment. So this commentator is really right on the money for a lot of reasons, including a scientific reason. So in a minute, we'll use scientific words, but right now I'll answer the direct or talk about the direct comment, which is this participant feels calmed and notes that when the emperor drank it, probably in the same vein of calm and enjoying the sweet and floral. Probably took some time to really comment on it. Now, there's science behind this. Who knew? As it turns out, because of this process, this seems to enhance the production of L-theanine. And L-theanine, our old friend from white tea, is produced at a higher level through this set of techniques to create yellow tea. So this yellow tea actually has a lot of L-theanine. And as I was doing the research for this morning's presentation, wow, the amount of L-theanine was startlingly higher than I expected. That was the first thing. The second thing that was a huge surprise to me is as you look at yellow teas across a spectrum, they go from very low caffeine to caffeine that's about just under the green tea level. And that surprised me as well. Although technically I shouldn't have been surprised, because I told you the rules before. I told you the framework of the rules. The framework of the rules is always more processing, less caffeine. And so some of the yellow teas are roasted. And of course their caffeine is going to be less. Some are not roasted. They go through a long time and their caffeine is going to be higher. Yes.
Well, another participant is also observing that it feels like for her this tea provides some mental clarity.
Yeah, mental clarity. They're calming, mental clarity, flavor, roundness, smoothness, floral, sweet, umami. I ask you this, can there be anything better to start the morning off with? And including learning about the greatest power in the universe.
Absolutely. Question from a participant, how is the oxidation process for yellow tea as compared to green tea?
So the participant asked, if I were to make a judgment about oxidation processes of yellow and green tea, what would it be? And my judgment would be as follows. Green tea is unoxidized. Remember, they bring the temperature in that initial heating process up to 300 to 400 degrees. They keep the tea in that for some 8 to 20 minutes. You denature, completely denature the enzyme that causes oxidation. This lower temperature, faster, you are encouraging oxidation, but you're not encouraging it in the same way as red tea. Remember what they do, which is so different with red tea. Here, let's back up. Yellow tea, they're putting it in boxes, segregated, 2 pounds. Red tea, it's all together piled yay high, and they don't care, well, they do care the temperature. They want that temperature to be close to 88, somewhere between 85 to 95. Here, they don't want that temperature to really get up to that. So red tea, encourage oxidation. Yellow tea, hey, let's keep a handle on this. So that's the difference between red and yellow. Green tea, hey, I don't want any oxidation. All right, so to finish up the process, remember they've wrapped, they unwrap after about 40 hours. They bake again because they're trying to reduce the amount of water. They rewrap. They combine all the leaves and then rewrap in these 2-pound packages, another 20 hours or so. Rebake once, cool. Rebake again, cool. And then final baking. So what are they really trying to do? I mean, gosh, can you imagine doing a brownie? Okay, we'll bake this thing, get it out. Are they looking to see whether it's, oh, not done, let's bake it again. Not done, let's bake it again. In essence, The answer is yes. Because instead of looking at a gooey mass, what they're really trying to determine is what is the moisture content in the leaf. Not in the leaf, false. Moisture content in the bud. They need that moisture content at the end of the day to get down to under 5%. But they can't do it all at once. I mean, we're Americans. We think, oh, okay, well, let's just turn it up to broil. We'll broil it for 3 minutes and it'll be, well done. No. With tea, you've got to do it step by step. You take it out, cool, try again, take it out, cool. You look at the color, you look at the shape. The shape of these leaves is important to them. If that shape isn't uniform, they discard it. And discarded leaves means discarded money, right? So doing this, they would rather take the extra time and care to get it right, to get the maximum value for the leaves, than to rush through and have to throw away 10%. This is very expensive. So how many buds are in a pound of tea? There are about 15,000 buds in a pound of tea. Now think about that. 15,000 hand motions in a pound. Now we used 4 grams. So a pound is 16,000 or 15,000 buds. A 16th of that would be about 1,000 buds. And then, let's see, there's 30 grams in an ounce. So 30th, so that's about 300. My math is a little faulty. It's about 30. So you have about 30 buds in here. And that's what when you break it down like that, this brings a different value, brings a different thought pattern about this tea, doesn't it? And that's one of the things about going to these farms, going to these production facilities and watching them do this, that brings this home, how valuable, how interesting, and how unique it is. Who in the world, what farmer woke up one morning and said, I'm tired of doing green tea. I know the emperor likes green tea. I like innovation. I like being creative. What am I going to do this morning that could be creative? Hey, you know what? I'm going to green it first. I'm going to tilt the pan at 20 degrees. Instead of, doing this motion, I'm going to do this motion. How long should I do? 4 or 5 minutes? I better let it cool too. You go through all of these excess steps. I mean, this makes Da Vinci look not as smart as we all believe him to have been. This farmer really was genius-like to come to this conclusion. Now, that's in jest. All of you know that somehow accidents must have occurred along the way, which led them in this direction. I can't understand, and unless I make up some fanciful story, which you'll see through right away, I wouldn't dare try and sell you on which accident occurred to make this happen, but something happened to cause them to change their modality, and at the end come up with this wonderful product. And it happened in a number of different places in China, but very small quantities in each place. Just truly amazing. Yes.
Participant comments that the ability to count the leaves, or I guess in this case buds, and to see them makes them more real than just saying 4 grams of bulk tea.
That's really a good comment. And that's why I tried to break this down in a different way, because we're so used to tea being presented culturally in our heads as tea bags, and culturally as something that can't be that valuable because it's all ground up. You just throw it kind of haphazardly in a cup, and then you haphazardly drink something that has a haphazard taste. And all of a sudden, you move from that to what the real situation is with the tea leaves themselves and the history behind this. And it becomes incredible. I think Bijou and I, over this journey, and this has been a 20-year plus journey for both of us, we have been stunned over and over and over again as we get deeper knowledge about the interaction with farmers and the leaves. And then we stunned ourselves as we experimented. Well, how do we brew this stuff in a way that's supersized, that you can appreciate, that matches the urban setting that we all are in? How do we do that? And so this whole journey has been one surprise after another. And I wish I could say the following. I wish I could say that after 20 years, you know what, folks? I know everything. I really do know everything. Tea Master even knows more than everything. But that would be false. Every year we go, we learn new stuff. And it isn't for lack of trying to know everything. We're trying to learn everything every time we go. And every year we fail. And that's to your benefit. More failures are to your benefit because that means we're finding more new and interesting things. Yes.
As we wrap up, is there a food you would pair this with?
Is there a food you would pair this with? Well, let me think here for a minute. At $2,000 or $3,000 a cup, I guess I better be eating lobster or caviar. So on a serious note, though, what I would do is actually make sure that when you serve this, that you serve it with some sort of light, not food, but almost a bread thing or a cookie thing that's not very sweet and that's light, because you don't want it. Who wants to take away from this? And if you're going to pair something, it better not really interfere with this. I almost would say this is postprandial. You eat, you get stuff started to digest, you sit everybody down. Now is the time for the treat of the meal. And you roll this out and have everybody sit and enjoy the aesthetic of the leaves, and then just the calming feeling afterwards.
Bouncing back to caffeine amount, what do you know what impacts caffeine amount in tea more? Is it oxidation or roasting?
So the questioner asks, do I know in a precise way that would be convincing whether roasting or oxidation has a greater effect on caffeine? And the answer is no, I do not. I don't know. I have a theory. So let's talk about theories rather than knowledge. My theory is that roasting has a greater effect on the caffeine, and the effect being reducing the caffeine. I have no idea. And even as I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking about oxidation. I might have to think about that very carefully because I just don't know. And I'm going to have to do a little bit more research into the oxidation question. Don't know the answer to that. Great. Well, as usual, I salute all of you, because when you went through the tasting portion of this, you all were incredible. You matched emperors. Unbelievable in terms of your commentary. Just fabulous. So we're about to start a new series. This series was incredible. You were blindsided. You had an encore today. Oh, and in between, you had deep satisfaction. The next series has to be good because one of the teas is named Jewel. How can you go wrong with that? look for, and the second tea, that's next week, by the way. The second tea is tapestry, and the third tea is a red tea. So, your responsibilities this week, stay safe, have fun, and we'll see you next weekend. Thanks a lot.
Take care.
Bye-bye now.
Let's see.